I'm going to discuss why Ripple and XRP could just go to the moon price-wise, and what might be the catalysts for neither of them or just one of them to actually succeed. And first, we're going to talk about the background of Ripple and the background of XRP so that you understand a base set of facts. And then I'm going to pretend as if I'm the little devil on the shoulder and then the little angel on the shoulder, and I'm going to be brutal in my analysis of the issues and things that could make it succeed or not succeed. First, my disclaimer. I'm Brian, big dumb animal. Don't do what I do. Informational purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor. I do have links below to various exchanges if you want to take a look. I'd appreciate it. Also, I Trust Capital below if you want to have IRA and a trust. And my school community where we discuss these topics and more and have daily updates on where we believe the market's going. And I have multiple courses to teach you everything about crypto. We'll talk more about that at the end. If you like the way I explain things, take a listen. Now, this video is not meant to upset anyone. I've been making videos on Ripple and XRP for quite a while. Let me show you. If you go and you subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Like, leave a comment. If you go to the main page after you subscribe and you scroll down, there's various playlists. There's one just for XRP, boom or bust, I call it. You click in and you will see 25 different videos. This one over a year ago. The very first one goes into great detail. I'm going to go over it fairly quickly, but this goes into a lot of detail about XRP and Ripple and exactly how they work. There's even more. The next one I would suggest, if you come up here, is the one where I say Ripple doesn't care about you. Okay, those are the basics. Now let's talk about the background of XRP and Ripple, as well as the recent lawsuit, and then I'm going to talk about the two different scenarios. First, here's a list of facts. In 2012, OpenCoin was founded. OpenCoin later rebranded to Ripple. All right. So essentially they've been around for 13 years. This is 2025 when I'm making the video. Two main objectives that you're probably familiar with. XRPL is the XRP ledger, the blockchain. XRP is the cryptocurrency. Ripple is a company. Those two things are completely different. Ripple does not control the XRP ledger. Ripple does hold XRP. So essentially, they've always said that they would do two things. One, as a currency. Two, cross-border payments. Those are the two objectives that they have outlined for the entire 13 years. Within the last year, they've talked about some other things. However, let's focus on those. Currency, using it as a currency, as you know, it's not currently a currency. They talked about it a while, then they didn't. It's gone back and forth, mainly the cross-border payments, and that's why you hear them talking about transferring money from large institutions, cross-border, possibly replacing or working with SWIFT. That's what a lot of the news and information's about. RippleNet is their solution for the transfer, and then ODL, on-demand liquidity, to be able to bridge on and off into fiat currencies. So fiat onto RippleNet, shoot the crypto across, receive the crypto, ODL back to fiat. Pretty simplistic. Now, if you watch that first video that I mentioned, I go all over how it replaces the current technology of the Nostro Vostro and why it's so much more efficient, because it is. Now, this is interesting. Ripple does not publicly disclose the number of cross-border transactions and payments. We'll get into that when I start talking about the two different scenarios. In December of 2020, US SEC sued Ripple Labs, alleging it conducted unregistered securities offerings. You've probably seen many people say they won the suit. It's not considered a security. Essentially, there were two different things going on. One was the sale of XRP by Ripple to individuals, and the other was to institutions. They said that the sale to individuals was okay, sale to institutions not so much. So they didn't classify XRP as a security. Buying XRP does not give you any ownership or equity interest in Ripple, the company. Let me make something very clear if you're not familiar. Again, this is just the background. I'm almost done. Ripple is a company. It's a private company. It has investors. It has shares. There are individuals that own the shares of the Ripple company. XRP Ledger is the blockchain. XRP is the cryptocurrency that some of you may or may not own or may be considering owning. Buying XRP does not give you any interest in the company Ripple. I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. I'm going to say this in a way that'll probably upset some people, but it is what it is. Ripple's defense was essentially this. XRP is not a security. And the reason it's not a security is because we screwed over the buyers of XRP. They thought they were getting an interest in Ripple. They're not. They're just getting an XRP token. If they received any interest in Ripple, then it would be considered a security. It's a valid argument. I don't like the way they did it, but it is what it is. Ripple holds a lot of XRP. It was gifted at the beginning when they started Ripple, 80 billion, because there's a total of 100 billion. 80 billion was put into Ripple. 20 billion was held by founders. That is the XRP. They did various things with it. They have some themselves, and a lot of it was put into escrow. We'll talk about that. But essentially, the reason I do these videos is because I want all crypto to survive and do well and thrive. And I want those that have invested in it, myself, yourself, to make money. And I want you to do your own research. And that's what this video is about. What I just presented to you, this list you see here on the screen, those are all facts. Those are not debatable. Those are facts. And that's what we're going to start with. Do I own XRP? No. I have in the past. I owned it and I sold it. As of the making of this video, I don't currently hold any spot XRP. I also don't hold any futures contracts, no leverage positions, no shorts, no longs. I don't have a dog in the fight. I want you to understand you should do your own research. And the reason I focus quite a bit on XRP and Ripple is because I see so many posts that are a little disingenuous. Sometimes you have to read into the post to understand what are they really saying. For example, when everyone was jumping up and down, this is wonderful. XRP is not a security. Now it's just going to take off. No, it had nothing to do really with the price of XRP or whether or not XRP is valuable. It had to do with, is this entity selling securities and not following the securities rules? And it was classified as, no, they're not. They're not selling securities because if you buy XRP, you don't get any interest in Ripple. That's what I want people to understand, because I see a lot of posts where people will say and use the word XRP and Ripple interchangeably. They're not interchangeable. Please, when you see news stories, say to yourself, is that information benefiting Ripple or is it benefiting XRP or possibly both? But sometimes it only benefits one. Okay, now let's first, just to drive it home, this is the Ripple website, private shareholders. You don't get any interest in this if you own XRP. XRP Ledger, XRPL, I should say, XRP Ledger, completely different, not controlled by Ripple at all. XRP is the currency on that blockchain. If you look at the Ripple site, look all around, you're not going to see any mention of XRP. You are going to see products and solutions, payments, custody, stable coins. They have a lot of things going on. So one of the things to note is that Ripple, and we're talking about scenario one, where XRP doesn't do that well. Maybe Ripple does. But Ripple does not have to use XRP in the RippleNet solution. So if you look at Ripple as a company, you'll say they came out with, I think in the last year, what they call Ripple Custody to help people custody their crypto. Now that could use XRP potentially as as a transaction component. But if we look at what their original task was, either be a currency or take over Swift's business and send unbelievable amount of bank transfers. If you look at their solutions, to do that, XRP would have to be used on RippleNet. RippleNet does not need to use XRP. Ripple, I believe, has even said that. I saw some articles where they've used stablecoins in RippleNet. They didn't even use XRPs. They don't have to use it. Might it be the most efficient? Possibly, but still they don't have to use it. Ripple custody doesn't necessarily mean it's going to use XRP in any large way either. Ripple came out with their own stablecoin. I thought that was interesting. RLUSD. Why? Well, stablecoins do make quite a bit of money. So those major products there, none of them require XRP. So Ripple could continue to push their business forward and continue to grow with those products, new products. I think they may have filed to become a bank and other things, and never really help XRP at all. That is a scenario. One thing I found very interesting is I cannot find anywhere, and I challenge you to find it. And if you do, please leave it in a comment, because I've said this on X all the time and no one's able to find any information. What are the monthly or quarterly or yearly numbers of the amount of XRP being used with bank transfers? They don't put that anywhere. There was a time when they put out these quarterly statements, but they're not a public company. They don't have to put out quarterly statements, and they can put whatever they want in the statements. They would talk about XRP, but they never made the differentiation between just market activity, people buying and selling XRP, versus those actually using XRP for transactions through RippleNet. They know what the numbers are. They don't release them. At least I haven't seen them. I can't find them. I'd love to see them. It makes you wonder if they don't release the numbers because possibly they're not good. So they don't have to use XRP. They've never released the numbers on cross-border payments. So now let's talk about their escrow. Like I alluded to before, 100 billion tokens. I go through all of this in my other videos. I'm just giving you the top high level. 100 billion tokens, 80 billion given to the Ripple. They kept some, I guess sold some, used some for acquisitions. 55 billion went into an escrow account. The escrow account, they can release 1 billion XRP a month. If they do that, it lasts 55 months, 1 billion a month. When that 1 billion is released, they have the option of keeping some or all of it. And they also have the option of putting some back into the escrow, which is typically what they do. If it's currently at, let's say, $2, the price of XRP, each month they take $1 billion out of escrow, they can sell it for $2 billion cash. When Ripple sells XRP, as some say, they dump it on the market. Typically, they don't put it all on the market. They can, let's say, sell 200 million and make $400 million and put the rest back in escrow. What happens when they put it back in escrow? It just lengthens the term because only 1 billion can come out every month. So if they put more in, it lasts longer. I believe it's estimated to last currently another 7 to 10 years. Theoretically, and everything I'm saying is a guess because I don't know how they operate, theoretically they could just be using the XRP that they sell on the market and they turn into cash to build their business. I see posts all the time about, wow, did you see this advertising campaign? It was on trucks, or it was in New York City in Times Square. It was here, it was there. And it's always advertisements for Ripple, never advertisements for XRP. So again, they could be using the XRP money to fund Ripple's operations. Those that buy XRP do not get any interest in Ripple. So if the value of Ripple continues to grow, the XRP is not a shareholder, so they don't get any value. That's important to know. The shareholders of Ripple are ecstatic. They're like, yeah, keep selling that stuff, XRP on the market, take the cash, run operations, grow the business. And what have they done recently? Lots of acquisitions. They've bought other companies. Why might they do that? Growth through acquisitions. If their business, if they're not doing what they said they started out to do, cross-border payments, and that's not happening. They haven't put any numbers out. Do we know if it's working or not? We have no idea. They don't say. They don't say in a public statement. They don't say in interviews. They don't put it out. They make no statements whatsoever, but they have been using that money to acquire other companies. Now, if those companies have streams of revenue, that would be associated to Ripple because Ripple now owns them. But again, that has nothing to do with XRP. Might they use them? Possibly. But if they don't use them and they just keep using the XRP money, then the value of XRP, it's not being used. It's useless. Meanwhile, Ripple continues to grow. They continue to stay quiet about whether or not they're using XRP. Why would they talk about it? Why would they talk about XRP not being used as much as we thought in RippleNet? That would make the price of XRP go down. So what do? They stay silent. To me, I don't like that. I don't like silence because they see what's being talked about. So what could they be doing? Not mentioning it, staying silent, and letting people make their own conclusions. Oh my goodness, this is great. This is great for this reason. It's great for that reason. It makes sense. Most people are optimists. So they're going to think everything is wonderful. Meanwhile, Ripple Corporate keeps their mouth shut. And they're using it, the money from the sale of XRP, to grow the Ripple business, which increases its value for the Ripple shareholders, not the owners of XRP. And then recently, they had this acquisition of GT Treasury. We'll talk about why these could be good, but at the moment, we're still in the tract of XRP does not thrive. They came out with this, Ripple Labs. Now this is, I don't think Ripple has commented on this yet, but I saw some stories about it. Ripple Labs reportedly leading a $1 billion raise via new digital asset treasury to accumulate XRP. And everyone was up in arms, how wonderful that's going to be. Hold on a second. A DAT, digital asset treasury. So they're using a SPAC. They're basically using an empty shell company that's already passed all the regulations and whatnot. They're going to try to raise money for that company. They might put in their own money, and then that company is going to go buy XRP. You know, they still have, I believe, 30 or more billion of XRP in escrow. Like I said, it could last another 7 to 10 years. They have a ton of XRP. This to me is bizarre. It's as if a company says, our goal is to sell to customers. We're going to sell our solutions to banks and they're going to use it. Uh-oh, it's not working. None of the banks want it. We don't have any customers. What are we going to do? We're going to create customers. Well, that's a good idea. Let's create a customer. So they create a DAT, and that DAT purchases XRP and holds it. So they're creating their own customer. Anyway, it's not a customer of their services. It's just a holding company, if you will, just like many other companies for Ethereum, a Bitcoin, that sort of thing. But it's interesting that they're raising $1 billion for it. And what's that going to buy them? At $2, it's going to buy them $500 million. Well, they can release $1 billion every month, and they typically don't keep it all. In 1 month, they could fund this with XRP, wouldn't need to raise $1 billion. Someone on X that said, buyback of XRP by Ripple, the one and only company that already owns 40 billion XRP, wasn't on his bingo card. Just solidifying what I just said. The idea that they've got 40 billion and now they're going to create or be involved with a DAT to buy it, that seems bizarre. I saw someone post this, and it was a bunch of reviews of people that worked at Ripple, and this got my attention. People on Glassdoor put up pros and cons. They had 4 of them that were, of course, negative. That's what they were pointing out. There's many pro ones as well, but a lot of unnecessary, useless middle management, prioritize being woke over substance, no vision or strategy, quarterly OKRs that are unrealistic. The business boasts a high balance sheet, but had no clue how to use it to grow their business. The development team is basically managing a VC and is hoping they can ride on the coattails of their investments. In other words, they're investing in buying other companies, hoping that those companies and what they're gaining from that is going to push their business forward. Kind of like what someone would call a roll-up. You raise some money, you don't have any products, services that are successful, so you go buy a bunch of companies, roll them all together, and the idea being the sum of the whole is greater than the parts on their own. Okay, so I went to Glassdoor itself and said, well, let's just look at it in general. Overall, I guess out of 5, they got a 2.9. And it shows some of the top reviews. If you look at the pros, benefits are good, pay's good, teams are supportive, some of the people are all great. But they all seem to be leaving the company. People are great. They seem to be so the pros are basically good pay and benefits. Well, of course, they can literally sell and make $2 to $3 billion a month and just pump it into the company and use it for PR and marketing. You might say, well, I see them on television all the time. I see them in interviews all the time. Of course you do. They have a huge marketing and PR firm, and they can pay for outsourced marketing and PR with the goal of just getting them plastered everywhere to make the world think things are great when they're not. Side note, I went through the dot-com bubble. I had my own company. I was in marketing and advertising. I raised money through an investment bank and through venture capitalists. I went through all of that. I saw the road shows. I was in some road shows. I've been in companies back in the day before the dot-com bubble in New York. Expensive Class A space. Blow your mind. You look around, you meet the people, you talk to them. You're like, this is unbelievable. This place is incredible. And then later, after the dot-com bubble, they went under because they literally had zero revenue. It was all a facade with that free money, so to speak, or easy flowing money. They made you feel as if everything was wonderful, but they didn't have squat. Not uncommon. I'm not saying that's the case here. But again, we're on the little devil side, which says they could just be making this whole facade. And for XRP, it's nothing. Now look, the pros are pay, money, benefits. Awesome. The cons, the management of this company is awful. 12, and that was in 12 reviews. Frequent layoffs, little regard for employee performance, incompetence, tenured staff are retained. A lot of unnecessary, useless middle management. As you scroll down and you look at these, company feels slow for its size, too much bureaucracy and process. You should not be feeling that from a crypto startup. Some members of senior management lack the ability and desire to support the team. Bad leadership, no future goals. Locations a bit scattered, that's no good. Micromanagement, ego, terrible culture. Product clarity and direction has been an issue for years. Okay, management here are not that bright. They make bad decisions. A lot of these talking about, hey, this one says unprofitable product and no clear direction. So this is kind of solidifying the idea that they haven't been taken on by banks. Now, people are going to say things like, well, you know, there were 1,200 NDAs, and that came out when the case, the SEC against them, they had to come out and say they had 12. An NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. If I haven't mentioned, I was an attorney. I was an intellectual property attorney. I was a patent attorney, dealt with trade secrets, trademarks, all that kind of stuff, as well, of course, of patents. An NDA is just a non-disclosure agreement. Hey, come to my house. I want to show you something cool I made. It's in the garage. But before you look at it, sign this NDA. I don't want you to talk about it. It doesn't mean you're going to buy my cool car. It doesn't mean you're going to drive my cool car. It just means that you're going to take a look at it and that's it. And you're not going to tell anyone. Those 1,200 non-disclosures, they could be potential deals or they could be nothing burgers. Absolutely nothing. So I thought that was a little disingenuous of people to put that out there. But this just goes to solidify the idea that at the end of the day, let's talk about the conclusion of the negative side for XRP holders. And that is that Ripple has XRP in escrow, and Ripple is selling it on the open market. They're using the proceeds for acquisitions to hopefully grow Ripple's value as a company. XRP has, if you own XRP, you have no interest. You are not a shareholder. You have no interest in Ripple. You're just someone who's buying it, who's essentially funding Ripple for the benefit of Ripple shareholders. That doesn't benefit XRP, and it's possible that XRP is really never used. It's possible that the revenue comes from these new acquisitions, and it's possible those new acquisitions don't use XRP. It's possible the revenue comes from RLUSD, a stablecoin. It's possible that it comes from their custody services. It's possible that it also comes from RippleNet and their ODL, but maybe they don't even use XRP and they use something else like their own RLUSD. So that's the scenario of XRP never really gets adopted. And over time, it just vanishes because it's just being used to dump on the market to fund Ripple. And over time, I want you to watch and see, does Ripple ever tell us whether or not XRP, how much XRP is being used for bank transfers on a monthly, quarterly, or yearly basis? I want you to etch that question in your mind if you're thinking of investing in XRP. The question is, and watch for it constantly. Don't worry about who they acquire. Don't worry about what someone says. Watch to see if an official Ripple source ever tells us how much XRP is being used, again, on a monthly, quarterly, or yearly basis to send money cross-border. That is the only question you need answered. Okay, Let's do the flip side of this. The flip side of this is, what if this works out? In other words, how would it work out? Well, we talked about their acquisitions. So let's say some of these acquisitions are very interesting. Some of them provide like treasury services. Some of them, I think one of them did provide some transfer services. So they use the money from escrow. They sell the XRP. They take that money they receive, or they can use XRP. They can either pay someone in money, they can pay someone in XRP. They could also pay someone with some shares or options or warrants of Ripple if they wanted to. You can cut deals however you want. But essentially, they use that escrow and what they have at their disposal to acquire company after company after company. And those companies, they're buying them because they are successful, because they do have revenue. Now, all of that is going to hit the income statement, the balance sheet, the financials of Ripple. And now Ripple is basically a roll-up company. And since no one wanted to use XRP, Ripple might say, hey, we just acquired you. Welcome to Web3. You're going to use the XRP ledger, the blockchain, and you're going to use XRP. Well, we haven't used XRP before. We don't want to use XRP. Well, you're going to because we bought you. So they basically buy them and force them to use it or tell them to use it. Not a bad idea. If you can't get customers to use it, buy your customers and make them use it. So potentially, this model may work. Now, eventually what's going to have to happen is, as the months and years go by, the amount of XRP they have in escrow goes down, but they're using it to acquire companies and revenue going up. So the idea is, can they make this roll-up strategy of buying companies that have revenue, making them use XRP? Can that become profitable before they run out of XRP to sell on the market? I think it could. I think this may work. This is a divergence from their original objectives, potentially. Maybe not. If they buy enough companies that do bank transfers and that sort of thing, and they have them use the ledger and XRP. So now this model of buying and rolling up companies could make Ripple very valuable. Again, option A, XRP is still not involved. They use other stable coins or other things. Option B, they do pull XRP along and they use it within all of these companies. So I do think that there's a path here, although it could take a while. And the path is continue to acquire using XRP or proceeds that you receive by selling it on the open market, US dollars, whatever currency they're using, and use it to acquire and grow. Quite possible that may work. They're a private company. We're not going to know the numbers, and we're not going to know if they ever hit that inflection point where they're able to turn profitable essentially before they run out of XRP. I think if they do get to that point, they may end up going public. You always hear them talk about, well, we don't need to go public. Well, no, I think they say that because right now, if they had to show their books, I don't think it would look good. In other words, the XRP, if it showed XRP not being used that much, they're not going to want to open and disclose their records and their information. They hold way too much XRP. But when they get down to almost zero, well, then they have nothing to lose. But this is the scenario where they acquire, they roll up, and potentially, the little angel on the shoulder says, this may work, but it could take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Who knows? And they would probably hold back on information, official information from their company, until either one, they're significantly profitable and they're using XRP, or they're just profitable. So that's the conclusion. Now you've heard the scenario that they could do extremely well and XRP does or doesn't do well, or they end up crashing and burning Ripple, and then probably in that case XRP wouldn't do well at all. But for those of you that are going to get angry with me because of what I've pointed out, know this: I could very easily have done what most people do if all I care about is getting subscribers and views, and I could have just given you nothing but hopium and just said that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. There are absolutely no negatives. Ripple's going to skyrocket. XRP is going to skyrocket. Everything's great, because I see people posting that and doing videos about that all the time. They just want people to subscribe to them. If you're going to not subscribe to me because I happen to lay the facts out this way, that's your decision. I want you to do your own research. I don't want anyone to get burned. Just be aware of the various issues and keep an eye for them. When you see a news story, who is it benefiting? Is it just benefiting the company? Is it benefiting XRP? Just look at it through that lens. I want you to be successful. I do want Ripple and XRP to be successful, but make sure when you look at news stories, you're looking through a lens that's going to allow you to make a good decision. Hope this was helpful. Please do listen about my school community. Have a great day. Love how I break things down? Then hop into my crypto school. You'll get step-by-step courses on everything: buying, selling, staking for yield, borrowing, lending, even going fully debanked. Plus, join lively crypto chats and catch my daily market updates. And lastly, if you just want to help support the channel, there's a join button just below this video.